100 years before the day that would shatter two civilizations, Dr. Rebecca Okonkwo stood in the observation deck of the research vessel Prometheus and watched a world die. Zelthar Prime turned slowly beneath her, its surface a tapestry of crystalline cities that had once gleamed like diamonds under their sun. Now those cities were darkening, their light fading as the fracturing spread through the population. The plague was elegant in its cruelty, turning the Zeltharians' silicon-based biology brittle and lifeless, transforming living crystal into dust. 8.4 billion souls stood at the edge of extinction, and the Galactic Council had offered them nothing but sympathy. Rebecca was 43 years old, brilliant, and possessed of a stubborn idealism that her colleagues found either inspiring or exhausting depending on the day. She had spent 5 years convincing Earth's human assembly to intervene, 5 years arguing that humanity's role in the galaxy should be defined not by what they could gain, but by what they could give. Now, standing at the precipice of either her greatest triumph or most devastating failure, she felt the weight of an entire species resting on her shoulders. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Not from elegant mathematical models or sophisticated quantum analysis, but from modified Earth fungi, simple organisms that could repair crystalline structures at the molecular level. It was messy science, trial and error, human ingenuity applied with desperate determination. The Zeltharian researchers had initially been skeptical. Their civilization valued mathematical precision and theoretical elegance. Humanity's approach seemed crude by comparison. But crude worked where elegant had failed. Rebecca would never forget the moment when the first test subject, an elderly Zeltharian named Vecthar, held up his hand and watched the crystalline structure solidify, strengthen, glow with renewed inner light. The sound he made, a resonant chord that translated roughly to overwhelming joy, had brought tears to every human researcher's eyes. They saved the Zeltharians, all 8.4 billion of them. And when the last patient was treated, when the plague was finally eradicated, Earth's ambassador delivered a simple message to the Zeltharian High Council. We ask nothing in return. Your survival is enough. The Zeltharians, a species whose entire culture was built on mathematical balance and reciprocal equations, could not comprehend such generosity. It violated their fundamental understanding of how the universe worked. But they accepted it, and in accepting, they gave humanity something more valuable than territory or resources. They gave their friendship. 100 years of brotherhood followed, joint colonies on 12 worlds, cultural exchanges that enriched both civilizations, Zeltharian mathematical frameworks revolutionizing human quantum computing, human adaptive engineering helping Zeltharians expand to previously uninhabitable worlds. Marriages between the species, adoption of each other's children, shared music and art and dreams. Admiral James Kincaid, commander of Earth's 7th Fleet, embodied that century of cooperation. His daughter Elizabeth had married Threnzik, a Zeltharian architect whose designs blended crystal harmonics with Earth aesthetic principles. They had adopted 2 children, one human and one Zeltharian, and built a life on New Sydney that represented everything the Alliance had achieved. When Kincaid visited them, which was often, he felt something he had never expected to feel about an alien species. He felt they were family. On the day New Sydney died, Kincaid was 6 hours away, conducting routine patrol operations near the outer colonies. He was reviewing supply requisitions, board paperwork that came with peacetime command, when his communications officer's face went pale. A Zeltharian fleet had emerged from FTL above New Sydney. 47 warships, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the light of New Sydney's sun. Standard formation, standard approach vectors. Nothing unusual except that no Zeltharian fleet had been scheduled for arrival. The orbital defense platforms hailed them, requested identification and purpose. Half those platforms were crewed by joint human-Zeltharian teams, friends calling to friends. The response was weapons fire. Kincaid watched on long-range sensors as the platforms died first, quick and efficient. Then the Zeltharian fleet began systematically targeting population centers. No evacuation warnings, no surrender demands, no explanation, just methodical extermination, as precise and emotionless as a mathematical equation. He ordered maximum burn toward New Sydney, knowing even as he gave the command that it was futile. 6 hours at maximum speed. The attack would be over in 4. His daughter's last transmission came through 3 hours into the attack. Elizabeth's face filled the screen, her home collapsing around her, her husband trying desperately to shield their children. She was screaming, not words, just raw terror and incomprehension. Then static. When Kincaid's fleet arrived, New Sydney was a tomb. 4.2 billion humans dead. 200 million Zeltharian colonists dead too, killed by their own people's weapons without discrimination or mercy. The oceans boiled. The atmosphere burned. The beautiful crystalline gardens where his grandchildren had played were melted slag. The Zeltharian fleet had jumped away, leaving only silence and ashes. Earth's response was not immediate fury. It was shock so profound it paralyzed an entire civilization. In homes across Earth and all human colonies, people gathered around screens and tried to comprehend the incomprehensible. Their closest friends, their allies, their brothers had just committed genocide. Why? Prime Minister Amara Osai, granddaughter of the woman who had saved the Zeltharians a century before, addressed humanity 12 hours after the attack. She had prepared a speech, carefully crafted words about strength and unity. She abandoned it the moment the cameras activated. Instead, she simply asked the question everyone was thinking. We don't understand. We saved them. We loved them. They were our brothers. Why? The Zeltharian government on Zelthar Prime responded immediately. Premier Cresthal, a relatively young official who had come to power only 2 years prior, appeared genuinely horrified. His crystalline features literally dimmed with distress as he condemned the attack, declared the fleet commanders criminals, promised full cooperation with investigations. "These monsters do not represent Zelthar," he said, his harmonic voice breaking with emotion. "We are as much victims as humanity. We will find who is responsible. We will deliver justice." But Earth's intelligence services, the vast network of analysts and investigators that had quietly operated for a century and a half, noticed inconsistencies immediately. The attacking fleet's commanders were all highly decorated officers. No history of extremism, no psychological flags, no indicators of instability. These were not rogue actors or terrorists. They were the best the Zeltharian military had to offer. More troubling, preliminary analysis of intercepted communications showed the fleet had received orders through official Zeltharian military channels 2 days before the attack. Whatever had happened, it had originated from within the Zeltharian command structure. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on Concordia Prime, the massive neutral station that served as galactic civilization's political heart. 847 species sent representatives, filling the grand chamber with a cacophony of forms and voices, all ostensibly united in shock and grief. Ambassador David Park represented Earth. He was 58, a career diplomat who had spent 30 years navigating galactic politics with charm and patience. That patience was gone now, burned away by 4 billion deaths. He stood at the speaker's podium, his dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives, and he did not mince words. "Members of the Council, we have preliminary evidence that the attack on New Sydney was not a rogue action, but a coordinated operation originating from official Zeltharian military channels. We demand a full investigation with human participation. We demand immediate sanctions on Zelthar until the truth is revealed. We demand extradition of everyone in the Zeltharian chain of command who authorized or facilitated this attack. 4 billion of my people are dead. The galaxy will provide justice, or we will seek it ourselves." The speeches that followed were masterpieces of political evasion. Condolences flowed like water, each representative expressing shock and sympathy in their species' particular style. But when the vote came for concrete action, the result was predictable. The Council would establish an independent commission to investigate. The commission would report back in 6 months. No sanctions. No extraditions, no immediate action whatsoever. Ambassador Park understood perfectly. The Zeltharians, grateful for their salvation and determined never to be helpless again, had spent a century building their military into the third most powerful force in the galaxy. No one wanted to confront them. Better to wait, to delay, to hope the crisis would somehow resolve itself. Park's final statement before walking out was delivered in a quiet voice that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "We will remember who stood with us today." And who didn't? Admiral Kincaid was assigned to lead Earth's independent investigation. It was a terrible choice from an emotional standpoint. The man had just lost his daughter, his son-in-law, his grandchildren. He should have been on compassionate leave, surrounded by grief counselors and family. Instead, he requested the assignment. His superiors, understanding that some people process grief through action, approved it. Kincaid assembled a team of the best xenotechnology experts, military analysts, and intelligence officers Earth possessed. They began with the wreckage. One Zeltharian ship had been shot down by the automated defense platforms before the platforms themselves were destroyed. Its remains had crashed into New Sydney's Southern Ocean, and recovery teams pulled the wreckage from the boiling water with grim determination. The ship's data cores were corrupted, but the crew's remains told a story. 3 days before the attack, all 47 ships' crews had undergone routine neural synchronization at a remote Zeltharian military station. This was standard procedure. Zeltharians sometimes linked their crystalline neural matrices for coordinated operations, achieving a level of tactical unity that other species could only dream of. But when Kincaid's xenotechnology experts examined the crew's neural structures, they found microscopic implants of a technology that was not Zeltharian. The implants were old, constructed with principles that predated modern galactic civilization by millennia, and their purpose, based on preliminary analysis, was clear: external control, mind control. Kincaid took his findings to Zelthar Prime personally. Premier Cresswell received him with what appeared to be genuine eagerness to help. The young Zeltharian leader granted immediate access to the military station where the synchronization had occurred, provided security clearances, offered full cooperation. Kincaid's team arrived at the station 2 days later to find it destroyed. An accidental reactor failure had killed everyone aboard and vaporized most of the structure. The timing was impossibly convenient, but Cresswell seemed as shocked as anyone. "Sabotage," he suggested. "Someone trying to cover their tracks." But one person survived. A junior Zeltharian technician named Velmara had been off-duty when the station exploded, visiting her family on a nearby colony. When Kincaid's intelligence operatives found her, she was terrified, hiding in a remote settlement and convinced she would be next. Her testimony changed everything. The neural synchronization, she explained, had been administered not by Zeltharian medical officers but by outsiders. Ancient-looking beings she had never seen before, their features suggesting they belonged to one of the elder species. They had council security clearances, the highest level possible. She had thought it odd but assumed it was some new joint training program. Only after New Sydney did she understand she had witnessed something terrible. Kincaid sat in his quarters aboard his flagship and stared at the intelligence report for 3 hours. A picture was emerging, one so disturbing that he almost rejected it out of hand. But his years of military service had taught him that the most effective attacks are the ones that seem impossible until they succeed. What if New Sydney was not the primary target? What if the real goal was to destroy the human-Zeltharian alliance itself? He began digging into Galactic Council history, aided by Earth's intelligence services. They found a pattern. Over 10,000 years, there had been 17 instances of inexplicable attacks between allied species, wars that erupted without clear causation, genocides committed by peoples who had previously been friends. Each time, the conflicts had shattered alliances that were growing too powerful, too unified. The Council's inner circle, 12 elder species who held permanent seats and wielded disproportionate power, had maintained their dominance for millennia through a simple strategy: divide and conquer. Prevent any coalition from becoming strong enough to challenge their authority. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. encrypted communications between Council elder stations and the Zeltharian military facility, technology signatures matching precursor artifacts known to be stored in Council vaults, financial records showing enormous transactions to Zeltharian military officers who later died in convenient accidents. Kincaid presented his findings to Prime Minister Osai in a secure communication. She listened in silence, her face growing harder with each revelation. When he finished, she asked the only question that mattered. "How certain are you?" 70%. Not enough for a court, enough for me. Osai nodded slowly. She had spent 3 weeks drowning in grief and diplomatic failures, watching the council do nothing while 4 billion of her people lay unavenged. Now she had a target and with it purpose. Bring me General Nkomo. General Patricia Nkomo was 62 years old and had spent 40 years running Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. She was a woman of medium height and unremarkable features who could disappear into any crowd, which was precisely the point. Her division operated in the shadows, gathering information, running assets, building networks. While Earth's public face was friendly merchants and cultural ambassadors, Nkomo's people watched and listened and remembered everything. She reviewed Kincaid's evidence in 1 hour and reached the same conclusion he had. The council's elders had orchestrated New Sydney. They had done it before. They would do it again unless stopped. "We have 3 options," she told Prime Minister Osai. 1. Go public with what we have. The council will deny everything, tie us up in debates for years while our evidence gets picked apart. 2. Do nothing and let the official investigation proceed. In 6 months they'll issue a report blaming rogue elements, maybe sacrifice a few Zeltharian scapegoats and nothing changes. 3. We stop playing by their rules. Explain option 3. Nkomo leaned forward. "We've been part of galactic civilization for 150 years. In that time, we've been model citizens. Friendly, cooperative, eager to learn. What the galaxy doesn't know is that we've also been gathering intelligence on everyone. Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every trade negotiation, my people were watching and recording. We know things, Prime Minister. Secrets that could destabilize governments, expose crimes, shatter alliances. The Council's elders have maintained power through manipulation and hidden violence. We can fight them the same way, but better, because we have something they don't. What's that? The truth, and the moral authority to use it." Prime Minister Osai thought about her grandmother who had saved the Zeltharians out of pure idealism. She thought about 4 billion dead. She thought about Elizabeth Kincaid's last transmission, screaming as her world burned. Then she authorized Operation Broken Trust. The operation began with liberation. Human Special Forces, the elite Void Walkers Regiment, infiltrated Zelthar Prime with a single objective: capture one of the Council's operatives alive and retrieve the neural control technology intact. The Void Walkers were humanity's answer to the galaxy's assumption that humans were soft, inexperienced in real warfare. Each operator was a veteran of the brutal solar conflicts that had nearly destroyed Earth before first contact. They moved through Zelthar Prime's crystalline cities like ghosts, avoiding detection, gathering intelligence, waiting for the perfect moment. Their target was a Corvathian overseer named Zelthar, one of the elder species who had managed the New Sydney operation. He lived in a secured compound, protected by Zeltharian security forces who had no idea what they were guarding. The extraction took 11 minutes. No shots fired. No casualties. Just 12 humans moving with perfect coordination, neutralizing security systems, bypassing locks, and disappearing with their target before anyone realized what had happened. Under interrogation, with Zeltharian truth verification technology applied by Premier Cresthal's own people, Zelthar confirmed everything. The Council's elders had orchestrated New Sydney. They had used precursor mind control technology to turn Zeltharian crews into unwitting weapons. They had done this 23 times before over 10,000 years. The goal was always the same: prevent dangerous alliances from threatening elder species power. The evidence was released simultaneously to Earth's government, Zelthar's government, and every major independent news network in the galaxy. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for the Council's elders. Premier Cresthal's response was broadcast across all Zeltharian worlds. He stood in the High Council chamber, his crystalline form literally shaking with rage and horror, and he delivered a speech that would define his legacy. We believed ourselves to be perpetrators. We have lived with the guilt of genocide, the knowledge that our people murdered our saviors, our friends, our family. That guilt was a burden almost too heavy to bear. Now we learn we were not perpetrators but weapons, tools used by ancient powers to destroy the most precious thing our species possessed, our friendship with humanity. He paused, his inner light pulsing with fierce determination. The guilt remains, but now it has a target. We were manipulated, used, made into monsters against our will. The Galactic Council's elders will answer for this. Zelthar formally withdraws from the Council effective immediately. We stand with Earth. We stand for justice. And we will tear down any power that would use us as weapons again. General Nkomo's intelligence war began in earnest. Over the next 4 weeks, carefully curated intelligence packages were released to the galactic media, each one targeting a specific elder species government. The Corvathian hegemony's leadership was exposed for systematically suppressing 17 subject species through economic manipulation and debt slavery. Within days, those species rebelled, demanding independence and reparations. The Vexnari communion's voluntary membership was revealed to be maintained through chemical dependency engineered into standard food shipments. Their client species, discovering they had been literally addicted to Vexnari control, rose in fury. The Arkan dominance's pristine reputation for wise governance crumbled when documents surfaced showing 73 political reformers had been secretly executed over 2,000 years. Internal revolution erupted across their worlds, but Nkomo was surgical in her targets. Elder species that had opposed the New Sydney cover-up or voted for real investigation received no intelligence attacks. In fact, Earth quietly shared stabilizing information with them, helping them weather the storm. The message was clear. Humanity's enemy was not the Council itself, but the corrupt core that had manipulated it for millennia. The Council's elders, watching their power structures crumble, made a final desperate play. They assembled a peacekeeping fleet of 3,000 warships from their most loyal subject species. The stated mission was to restore order by occupying Earth and Zelthar for their own protection. The real goal was to crush the rebellion before it spread further. Admiral Kincaid, now commanding the combined human-Zeltharian fleet, received intelligence about the Council fleet's approach. He had 800 ships against their 3,000. The odds were terrible, but Kincaid had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never come. He positioned his fleet at the threshold of shadows, a strategic chokepoint between Council space and human territory. It was a classic defensive position, one that forced the Council fleet to come through a relatively narrow corridor of stable space. When the Council fleet arrived, their commander transmitted a simple demand: stand down, accept occupation, submit to Council authority. Kincaid's response was equally simple: no. The Battle of Threshold of Shadows lasted 17 hours and rewrote galactic understanding of human military capability. The Council fleet expected a quick victory. They outnumbered the human-Zeltharian force nearly 4-1. Their ships were built by civilizations with thousands of years of technological refinement, but they had never fought humans before. Not really. Human military doctrine was forged in the brutal solar wars that had nearly extinguished their species. Every human warship was built with redundancy that seemed wasteful to galactic standards. Lose 60% of your systems and a Council ship became a drifting hulk. A human ship kept fighting. Human crews trained for extended combat, for battles that lasted days or weeks rather than the quick decisive engagements galactic warfare favored. And combined with Zeltharian precision, with their mathematical perfection in targeting and coordination, the result was something the galaxy had never encountered. The Council fleet broke after losing 1,400 ships. Their commander, watching his forces dissolve under sustained human-Zeltharian assault, finally ordered retreat. Kincaid's fleet had lost 134 ships, and every single loss burned in his mind like a personal failure, but they had won. Yet Kincaid did not pursue. Instead, he broadcast on all channels, his voice carried to every world in Council space. We don't want your territory. We don't want conquest. We want justice and reform. Stand down and let's talk. The Galactic Council reconvened 3 weeks later. Half the elder species were dealing with internal rebellions. Their military power had been decisively defeated. Species after species were withdrawing from the Council, demanding complete structural reform. Prime Minister Osai and Premier Cresthal addressed the assembly together, a human and a Zeltharian standing unified. Their demands were non-negotiable: dissolution of permanent elder seats, complete disarmament and destruction of all precursor mind control technology, a truth and reconciliation process for all previous manipulated conflicts, a universal rights charter protecting all species, and human-Zeltharian oversight with real authority for the next century. The Corvathian High Chancellor, leader of what remained of the Elder Species Coalition, made one final attempt to resist. He stood before the assembly, his ancient features twisted with contempt, and delivered what he thought was a devastating condemnation. You speak of justice, Ambassador Osai, but look at what you've done. You've destabilized governments, killed thousands in battle, threatened the order that has kept this galaxy from total war for 10,000 years. You're proving that humans are too dangerous, too emotional, too— Admiral Kincaid, present in full military dress uniform, interrupted. He had been silent throughout the session, standing behind the human delegation like a statue. Now he moved forward and the entire chamber fell silent. You killed my daughter, Kincaid said quietly. You killed my grandchildren. You killed 4 billion of my people. You did it using our closest friends as weapons, specifically calculated to break the bonds between our species. And you did all of this to maintain your power. He approached the Corvathian Chancellor, stopping just short of the elder being. We could have done the same. We could have blamed the Zeltharians, gone to war with them, killed billions in revenge. That's what you expected, isn't it? That's what you wanted. Instead, we investigated. We found the truth. We exposed it. We fought only those who attacked us. And now we're offering you something you never offered us. A chance to change, to do better, to build something actually worth preserving. He placed a data chip on the chamber floor between them. This contains evidence of 214 Council operations over 10,000 years. Manipulations, assassinations, manufactured conflicts. We have it all. We could release it publicly and watch your governments collapse entirely. Or you can accept reform, face justice, and help us build a council actually worthy of the name. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like hours. You called us dangerous. You were right. We are dangerous when you make us desperate. But you forgot something. Desperate humans don't just fight, we win. And then we make sure it never happens again. The vote was not unanimous. 224 species, mostly elder species or their closest clients, voted against reform. But 623 voted in favor. The Galactic Council as it had existed for 10,000 years died that day. Something new, uncertain but potentially better, began to take its place. 2 years later, Admiral Kincaid stood on New Sydney's reconstructed surface. The world would never be what it was. 4 billion dead could not be brought back. But humanity and the Zeltharians together had rebuilt the major cities, restored the atmosphere, and planted new crystalline gardens that sang softly in the wind. The memorial was Threnzic's design. Kincaid's son-in-law had survived the attack only because he had been off-world on business. He had lost his wife, his children, his home. Grief should have destroyed him. Instead, he channeled it into creating something beautiful. 4.2 billion names were etched in Zeltharian crystal, each one linked to harmonic resonators that would sing their memory for 1,000 years. The central spire reached 100 meters high, visible from orbit, a testament that some bonds cannot be broken even by genocide and manipulation. The inscription in both human and Zeltharian languages was simple. They died in an attack meant to divide us. Instead, their sacrifice united us in truth. May we never forget. Love is stronger than manipulation, friendship deeper than conspiracy, and justice more enduring than power. Premier Cresthel stood beside Kincaid at the dedication ceremony. The Zeltharian leader had aged visibly in 2 years, the weight of his species' unwitting crime evident in the dimming of his crystalline features. But he had never wavered in his commitment to justice and reform. "We cannot give them back," Cresthel said quietly. "We cannot undo what was done to us, what was done through us. All we can do is ensure it never happens again." Kincaid nodded. He thought about Elizabeth, about her last message telling him not to hate, to find the truth, to not let tragedy make them enemies. He had kept that promise. It had cost him everything he had left to give, but he had kept it. "She would be proud of you," Cresthel continued. "Elizabeth. She believed in what we could be together. She died believing it, and we proved her right." 10 years after New Sydney, the reformed Galactic Council functioned under new principles. No permanent seats, no elder species with disproportionate power, universal rights protected by law and enforced by the Human-Zeltharian Oversight Commission. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disputes, still species who resented humanity's role in reshaping galactic civilization. But the systematic manipulation had ended. The precursor technology that enabled mind control had been destroyed, watched by representatives from 200 species to ensure no peace remained. The truth and reconciliation process had exposed crimes going back millennia, allowing species to finally understand conflicts they had thought inexplicable. Earth's reputation had transformed completely. They were no longer the friendly newcomers, the eager students learning from elder species. They were the civilization that had brought justice when the old powers would not. Some species admired them. Some feared them. All respected them. On Earth, in the Museum of Galactic Relations, an exhibit detailed the New Sydney attack and its aftermath. Visitors could read Dr. Rebecca Okonkwo's original journals, filled with her idealistic hopes for human-Zeltharian cooperation. They could examine the evidence that exposed the Council conspiracy. They could watch footage of the Battle of Threshold of Shadows, see the moment when humanity proved they could fight and win against overwhelming odds. But the exhibit's centerpiece was simpler. A holographic message, recovered from New Sydney's ruins, played on continuous loop. Elizabeth Kincaid, in the last moments of her life, her home collapsing around her, had recorded a message for her father. "Dad, if you get this, I need you to listen. Don't hate them. Something's wrong. This isn't who the Zeltharians are. This isn't what we built together. Find out what happened. Find the truth. Don't let whoever did this make us enemies. Don't let them win. We're better than that. Humanity is better than that. I love you. I love Thren. I love our children. I love the galaxy we were building. Don't let them destroy it. Please." Admiral Kincaid, retired now but still consulted on matters of galactic security, visited the exhibit once a year on the anniversary of the attack. He would stand before his daughter's message and remember her idealism, remember her faith in the Alliance, remember her final wish that he find the truth rather than surrender to hate. He had kept that promise, and in doing so, he and humanity had taught the galaxy something it had forgotten over 10,000 years of cynical power politics. The most powerful thing an apex predator can do is not destroy its enemies. It is to prove that mercy, justice, and truth are not weaknesses. They are the foundations of strength that endures long after empires built on manipulation crumble into dust. The memorial on New Sydney sang its soft harmony, 4 billion voices remembered in crystal and light. And across the galaxy, humanity's reputation carried a new understanding. They were dangerous, yes, formidable in ways the elder species had never imagined. But they were also something more important. They were just. And that made all the difference.